Good morning. Welcome. I'm Trey Mayo. I'm the fire chief for the city of Winston-Salem. Thanks to everyone for being here this morning to help us commemorate what is truly a momentous occasion. Special thanks to Reverend Stowe. Where'd Reverend Stowe get off to? There he is. Thank you, sir, for hosting us inside this morning. It was raining when I got here. We're going to try to get through this before it starts back. Mayor Pro Tem Dee Dee Adams is here, along with council members Annette Scipio and Kevin Mundy. We appreciate you all being here. It's good to see you this morning. And we have a couple of retired fire chiefs in the audience this morning. Chief John Gist is here, as is former retired chief Tony Farmer. Thank you all for coming. And I would not be I don't know what the word is. I wouldn't be doing what I need to be doing if I didn't thank Miss Sabrina Stowe this morning, our fire and life safety educator. She and Frank Elliott from the city's marketing and communication department have done a bang-up job getting this event organized and everything in place, and then making a last-minute adjustment to bring us inside this morning. So thank you, Sabrina, very much. And I haven't seen Frank, but I certainly do appreciate his help. Mayor Alan Jones could not join us this morning, but he did pre-record some remarks, and we're going to play those. And then if I can get Mayor Pro Tem Adams and Scipio, Councilmember Scipio, and then Councilmember Mundy, if you all just come up in order as one finishes, the other one can come up. We'll get that started. Thank you, Larry.
Hello everyone, I'm Alan Joins, the mayor of the city of Winston-Salem, and I'm sorry I can't be with you personally today, but it's such an important event as we celebrate 50 years since the integration of Fire Station number 4 here in Winston-Salem by 8 courageous African-American men who really set the stage for our now modern fire department. In 1951, when this vote was taken by the then Board of Aldermen, it was a controversial vote. Matter of fact, it was a 4-4 vote. It was broken, the tie was broken in favor by then Mayor Marshall Curfews, which was a courageous vote on his part as well. These 8 firefighters were under a lot of pressure to make sure that they could prove that they could do the job here for the Winston-Salem Fire Department. There were folks who didn't believe they could. But in fact, most of these 8 were well educated, served in the military, and probably had higher education than a lot of the firefighters then. So they proved what a great station they could operate and what great personnel they would be for the city of Winston-Salem. So today, I urge our citizens to pause and to thank those 8 courageous men who set the stage for the future of integration in the Winston-Salem Fire Department, such a great department we have today. Thank you for letting me be with you today.
Good afternoon. Isn't this wonderful? I am Dee Dee Adams, Denise D. Adams, Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member of the North Ward. And I want to thank the Councilwoman Scipio for the hospitality of the East Ward for having this event. And I want to thank Chief Mayo and the Fire Department, Winston-Salem Fire Department, for this effort. But most importantly, I want to thank the families of these courageous men that allowed them to go out every day and every night, not knowing what would become of them because of the times that we were living under at that moment. For those of you that don't know, I grew up on Claremont Avenue as well. I know you hear me talk about Boston Thurman, but in 58, my parents moved to Claremont Avenue, which is Martin Luther King right around the corner. Used to go to the Mr. Nance store up here. He had the best butter pecan ice cream. And I lived in this neighborhood, and I ran up and down Dunleaf and all of these streets around him. And it was the men and women that served this community, particularly those firemen and policemen, that little black girls and black kids like me grew up with, seeing them every day in our community and being able to go to the firehouse and run by there and holler, and they holler at you and they tell you, you better get on home because your mama and them gonna be looking for you. But again, on behalf of the mayor and the Winston-Salem City Council, and the councilwoman of the ward and others, we want to thank you all for your service. We want to thank your family and God for blessing you and us with the fortitude you had to be a part of the Winston-Salem Fire Department, because you could have went and done something else. But you made your way and you decided this is what you were going to do. So we thank you this day, and we are honored and blessed to be able to have this initiative today and marking this auspicious occasion. And I want to say hello to my classmate, the class of 72 East Forsyth, former Chief John Giss. We started hanging out at Atkins High School, and we graduated from East Forsyth. And thank Chief Farmer as well. Thank you all very much.
Well, good morning. What a beautiful day it is. It may be raining outside, but there's so much joy and sunshine at this time. I can remember coming to this particular building when it was the fire station. I attended 14th Street School, which is at Cameron, or was at Cameron and 14th Street. And I do believe second and third grade, we came here. We walked from 14th Street School to here. We walked everywhere in Winston at that time. But we had little kids. We were kids, 7, 8 years old, coming to the fire station. What a magnificent field trip that was, because we would come and get so excited. We never could understand how they came down that pole from upstairs, and we always wanted to do that. Of course, we weren't allowed. But the firemen here were so gracious. But more importantly, for us growing up, to see them on that fire truck in the 50s and in the 60s, sometimes you don't even know what you're seeing and how wonderful it was, but we knew they were special. These were men who had excellence as their mantra. So whenever that fire truck came out that door and we could hear it, oh my, everybody started running towards the fire truck. And we ran after the fire truck. And until it got too far, because if it came off the block, you couldn't go but so far, because everybody would know you were out of your boundary. But, it was just so magnificent to see these men who served us. And as I said, it was all about excellence, because they knew, and if you grew up in segregated times, you understood about being the first African American. To be the first meant that you set the standard. If you failed, there will probably be no others coming. So you were the first, you set the standard. You made the sacrifices to be unquestionably excellent in everything you did. They were professionals, and they looked good. I always thought the fire department had the best looking black men. Woo! Growing up, they were supermen and superheroes, but they were so wonderful. So today we celebrate that monumental step that these firemen chose to take to be the first. And I put this in the context of America. You have to understand, this was a decade before civil rights, before forced integration. What a progressive city we lived in. We oftentimes don't think about it, but we were very progressive in Winston-Salem. To have these men come in 1951 and to have this fire station right here in our neighborhood, it was just evidence that somebody knew that African Americans were first-class citizens, not second class. We never saw ourselves as second class. And we were taught, even then, to be the best you could become. Be excellent, be professional. And then what a beautiful thing happened when Lester Irvin became our first African-American fire chief. What a blessing. What a feeling we had in our community that yes, indeed, all of those sacrifices did pay off. And I recognize Mr. Carter. Thank you for enduring and still being with us. And we have Mr. Greer, who's still with us. Still phenomenal men. We thank you so much. So sometimes you don't even know that you're making a statement just because it was the job you were doing. And they did their job well, but we were watching, we were looking, all of us, even the girls. It was such a sexist society, of course. We couldn't entertain being a fireman. But nonetheless, look at what you've done. Look at the legacy we have. And we thank you so much. We thank you so much for that. And I say to Winston-Salem, I say this to all of us. See what they did 50 years ago. Imagine what the city must be 50 years from now. Because that's what we must do. We must step into places that we've not been before. We must ensure that our young people feel connected to this community and know that there are opportunities for them. We must stop complaining. We must start doing, because we have so many wonderful people who were the first to open the doors, and they've kept them open. And so thank you, Winston-Salem. Thank you, Marshall Curfews, for making that vote. And as I grew up as a girl, he was a hero to many in the black communities. We needed to know who Marshall Curfews was, because he did make those votes when it was critical. So thank you all for coming.
Good morning, folks. I'm Kevin Mundy. I'm the Southwest Ward representative on City Council. I didn't grow up in Winston-Salem. I didn't move here until 1987, so I don't share the history of the neighborhood and of the city, but I am just as passionate and supportive of all of our firefighters, the men and women who do put their lives at risk every day to make sure that we all stay safe and to protect us. But I want to tell you that when you move to Winston-Salem, I moved here from a smaller town in South Carolina. I was fascinated with the history of Winston-Salem, and being an outsider, I probably read more about Winston-Salem than some people who live here read about and knew. And one of the things that's always fascinated me is that Winston-Salem has never been afraid to break barriers. The city has never been afraid to be the first to do something. And I think when it comes to the integration of this fire department and other steps that we have taken, we have been ahead of the curve. There's still so much work left to do on both sides. But I am proud to serve on the City Council with Mayor Pro Tem Adams and with Councilwoman Scipio, and my other colleagues, and we're going to do everything that we can as we move forward to make sure that we are the best city in North Carolina, moving towards the best city in the state. We're so appreciative of everything that all of our public safety officers do on the fire side and on the police side. We couldn't be here without your protecting us and serving us all the time. So thank you for letting me be up here and speak a few words in appreciation, and I'm just happy to be part of this day.
Thank you, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and Council Members Scipio and Mundy for those comments. And Councilmember Mundy alluded to some of the firsts, as did Councilmember Scipio. And I wanted to take a few minutes before we get to the purpose of this ceremony to talk about some of the firsts, the history of firsts in the Winston-Salem Fire Department. The town of Salem when the two towns were still separate, if not the first, had some of the first in America, the fire prevention codes, following a chimney fire at the Brothers' house in 1778. And then that same year, Salem installed the first pressurized water system in the colonies. And following a fire in 1784 that burned down the Salem Tavern to the ground, the town of Salem chartered one of the earliest fire companies in the United States. It was the first to be chartered in North Carolina, and it had the first pumping fire apparatus in the state. That pumper, coupled with what was by then over a mile of pressurized water mains, represented a major advance in fire control. And sometime between 1885 and 1893, the Winston-Salem the Winston Fire Department purchased what was likely, which is still a toss-up. There's still some research being done, but either Winston or Asheville had the first tiller fire apparatus in the state of North Carolina. And of course, that brings us to March 1st of 1951, 70 years ago today, when, in the face of opposition by then Fire Chief Milton Brown, but with the support of local businessmen and politicians, 8 black men, Raphael Black, Willie Carter, Lester Irvin, John Henry Ford, Robert Greer, John Meredith, George Penn, and John Thomas were hired as firefighters for the Winston-Salem Fire Department. They were the first black firefighters to be hired following the disbanding of the volunteer fire companies that existed at the 1913 merger of Winston and Salem. As Mayor Joines alluded to, those 8 men were primarily veterans and college graduates, and were largely regarded as being overqualified compared to a lot of their white counterparts. After their training, they staffed Station 4, the first fully integrated career fire station in the state of North Carolina. These men had to work through the social conventions of the day, which were issues that were compounded by the nature of a career fire department staffing system, which requires firefighters to live together for 24 hours at a time. Chief Brown stonewalled as much as he could by having white firefighters sign a petition that they did not want to work with black firefighters, and by claiming that there were no whites willing to train the blacks. While some whites, like Training Officer Lieutenant Lester Williams, made sure the men were well trained, other whites, directed by Chief Brown, were intentional in creating training scenarios so difficult that they thought it would make the black firefighters quit. But owing to Williams' commitment and their determination, it didn't work. They did not fail. Not only were they sharp on practical scenarios, but the class average on their written exams when they graduated from the fire academy was 93. So after coming on shift here at Station 4, they were provided right here, and this is the old truck room right here, old engine room right here. They were provided a fire truck that was so unreliable they sometimes had to push it. Right, Chick? You all had to push it to get the engine to crank, right? So this station, when the black firefighters were assigned here, this station was modified so that it had separate sleeping, eating, bathroom facilities, those sorts of things. But it didn't take them long well, let me back up. They were, so in addition to that, they were only allowed to answer calls in the black neighborhoods, but it didn't take them long to prove themselves. And they soon went from being the last engine call to back up other companies to being the first. As I think it was Mayor Pro Tem Adams talked about, and probably Councilmember Scipio as well, the firefighters became integrated in this neighborhood. I mean, they became embedded in the neighborhood, established relationships with neighbors, befriended neighborhood kids, and so, you know, as as was alluded to earlier, they were part of the neighborhood, and they were well known and well liked. And then 4 years into their careers in 1955, Raphael Black and Lester Irvin were promoted as the department's first black sergeants. And Chief Irvin, he lived in that brick house right across the street. A few years later, Black would become the department's first black lieutenant and Irvin the first black captain. Both men worked their way to what we know today as assistant chief. And Irvin went on, and in 1980 became not only the department's first black fire chief, but the first career black fire chief in the state of North Carolina. And of course, the current Station 4 on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive is named in Chief Irvin's honor. These 8 men tore down the walls of segregation and opened a door that hundreds of minorities have walked through on their way to successful fire service careers. Sandra Waldron became the first career female firefighter in the United States in 1973 and was the first female battalion chief in the department's history. And then Angela Sowell, where is Angie? She's around here somewhere. She's there she's sitting 2 rows from the back. Angela Sowell became the first black female deputy fire marshal in 2016. Darrell Sawyer, standing on the wall over here, he became the department's first black division chief in 2018. And then Sharice Moore she's standing next to Chief Sawyer, she became the first black female battalion chief in 2015 and the first black female division chief in 2019. So the legacy of the first 8 lives on. And I think what is as remarkable as any part of this story is 2 of those original 8 are still alive. Captain Willie Carter, retired Captain Willie Carter, is here, 97 years old. He's sitting in the front row. And retired engineer Robert Greer was unable, unfortunately, to be with us this morning. He's 99. And they both of these men were promoted to honorary chiefs in 2017. They truly are living legends. So can I get a weather check? Is it still, do we have any rain or is it dry right now? Okay, we're good to go. So we're going to, I have the mayor's proclamation for renaming Dunleith Avenue as First 8 Avenue. And I'm going to ask Captain Carter and elected officials. I haven't seen anybody here from the manager's office this morning, but if there's anybody here representing the manager's office, along with fire officials, the current fire folks, retired chiefs, Gist and Farmer, and anybody else who wants to be part of this morning. If we can make our way out to the corner up here, we will unveil the street sign making this honorary First 8 Avenue. You got it? So, yes, sir. In recognition of the 70th anniversary of the integration of the first career fire station in North Carolina, we're going to honorarily rename Dunleith Avenue as First 8 Avenue, and I'm going to read the mayor's proclamation before the unveiling. Whereas on October 9th, 1949, the Winston-Salem Board of Aldermen voted to hire the city's first paid African-American firefighters, making Winston-Salem the first city in North Carolina and only the second south of the Mason-Dixon line to integrate its fire department since the Jim Crow era. And whereas out of more than 70 applicants, the city hired Raphael Black, Willie Carter, Lester Irvin, John Henry Ford, Robert Greer, John Meredith, George Penn, and John Thomas to serve as the city's first 8 African-American firefighters. And whereas these 8 trailblazers began training on March 1st, 1950, and completed their training on April 15th, with 4 men achieving a perfect score on the final written examination and the group as a whole achieving an average score of 93. And whereas in the ensuing years, these men continued to distinguish themselves through their service on the fire ground and in the community as they rose through the ranks, with one of them, Lester Irvin, becoming the first black fire chief of a municipal fire department in North Carolina. And whereas these first 8 African American firefighters served at the original Fire Station 4 on Dunleith Avenue, just south of the intersection with East 3rd Street in Winston-Salem, now therefore I, J. Allen Joines, Mayor of the City of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim that the area along the above intersection shall be known as First 8 Avenue. Thank you all again for coming.